The wind carried dust across the open fields of the research outpost. Small houses stood close together, their walls made of stone and metal, shining faintly under the weak light of the planet's sun. Humans had lived here for many years, growing crops and studying the strange land that was so different from Earth. Life was quiet, but it was not without challenges. One afternoon, a worker named Arun was repairing a water pump near the edge of the settlement. As he worked, he noticed something unusual moving far away near the hills. At first, he thought it was just an animal searching for food, but the shape was too tall, too unsteady. The figure staggered, nearly falling with every step. Arun narrowed his eyes. The figure was no human. As it came closer, he saw thin arms, large dark eyes, and skin that looked pale under the sun. It was a young alien girl. She looked weak, her movements slow, as if every breath was heavy. A group of villagers gathered near the main path, whispering to each other. Some felt afraid. Others simply stared in silence. No one had seen one of her kind here before. She should not be here, an old farmer muttered. What if she brings danger? She looks like she can barely stand, another replied. The alien girl finally reached the edge of the settlement. Dust clung to her clothes, and there were faint marks across her arms, as if her journey had not been kind to her. She tried to speak, but only a soft sound escaped her lips. Her legs gave way, and she fell to her knees. Most of the humans stepped back. They did not know if she was sick or if she carried some hidden threat. But Arun felt something different. He saw not danger but desperation. Slowly, he walked forward, holding a flask of water in his hands. The girl lifted her head slightly, her eyes filled with fear but also with hope. Arun knelt beside her and offered the flask. She hesitated for a moment, then reached out with trembling hands. She drank slowly, as though each drop was a gift. The crowd behind Arun whispered again. Some thought he was foolish, but others watched quietly, curious about what might happen next. Arun placed a small piece of bread in her hands. She ate it carefully, her large eyes never leaving his face. She did not speak, but her gaze held questions. Why was he helping her? Why did he not turn away like the others? After a few moments, she tried to stand again, but her strength failed her. Arun supported her gently, guiding her toward the shade of a nearby wall. Her body was light, almost weightless, as though she had not eaten well in many days. The alien girl leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. Arun noticed how tired she was, but he also saw something else. Behind her silence, behind her weakness, there was a spark of life that refused to die. He spoke softly, even though he knew she might not understand. You are safe here. Rest. She tilted her head, listening to the tone of his voice. Perhaps she did not know the words, but she understood the kindness. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since her arrival, her face showed something close to relief. The other settlers continued to watch. Some still doubted. Arun, you should be careful, one woman called out. We don't know who she is. Arun nodded but did not step away. I know, he answered, but I also know she is tired and hungry. That is enough for now. The alien girl slowly closed her eyes, her body relaxing against the wall. The warmth of the water and bread gave her strength, even if only a little. For the first time in a long while, she felt no pain, no harsh words, no cruelty. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the settlement returned to its usual rhythm. Yet everyone knew that something had changed. An outsider had come, and with her came questions they had never faced before. Arun stayed near her as the evening shadows grew longer. He did not know who she was, where she came from, or why she had arrived in such a broken state. But he did know one thing, she needed kindness, and he would give it freely. The alien girl opened her eyes once more before sleep took her. She looked at the human beside her, the one who had given her water and food when others only stared. In her heart, a small spark of hope was born. That night, under the alien stars, a new story quietly began. A story not of fear or rejection, but of gentle care that could change a broken life. The night was quiet at the outpost. A cool breeze swept through the narrow streets, carrying with it the smell of soil and grain from the fields. The alien girl rested in a small shelter near Arun's home. She was still weak, but after water and food, her breathing had become calm. For the first time in many days, she slept without fear. Arun stayed nearby, checking on her often. Though others in the settlement warned him to be cautious, he felt no fear. Something about the girl reminded him of a lost bird, one that had fallen from the sky but still longed to fly again. By morning, the settlement was busy once more. Farmers tended to their fields, children ran between the houses, and workers repaired the machines that kept the outpost alive. Yet everywhere whispers followed the alien girl. People wondered where she had come from and why she looked so broken. When she finally woke, the sun was already high. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light. She sat up, startled at first, but then relaxed when she saw Arun nearby. He offered her a warm drink, and she accepted it with shaking hands. Arun spoke gently. "Can you understand me?" he asked. She only tilted her head, not knowing the words. He tried again, pointing at himself. "Arun," he said slowly. Then he pointed at her, waiting. The girl hesitated. She placed her hand on her chest and made a soft sound, almost like Lira. Arun repeated the sound. "Lira." He smiled. "Your name is Lira." Her eyes brightened. For the first time, she heard her name spoken kindly. She nodded, and a faint smile touched her lips. Over the next few days, Arun tried to learn more about her. Since they did not share a language, they used gestures and drawings in the sand. Arun drew simple shapes of houses, trees, and rivers. Lira added her own drawings: tall towers, large ships, and figures with sharp eyes and hard expressions. From her drawings, Arun slowly pieced together fragments of her story. Lira came from a colony not far from this planet. Her people were strict and cold. They valued strength and obedience above all else. Those who did not fit their standards were pushed aside. Lira, small and gentle, had been seen as weak. She showed Arun marks on her arms, not wounds but reminders of hard labor. She drew figures walking away, leaving one figure alone. She tapped her chest, her eyes downcast. Arun understood enough: she had been abandoned. Arun felt a weight in his heart as he watched her. She had suffered much, not from enemies but from her own people. He spoke softly, even if she could not understand every word. "You are not weak, Lira. You are strong, stronger than they know." Though she did not understand his language fully, his tone was enough. She looked at him with wide eyes, and for the first time, tears welled in them. Not tears of fear, but of release. Arun offered her more food and water, and she ate slowly. Around them, children from the settlement peeked curiously, whispering to each other. At first, they were afraid of Lira's appearance, but when they saw her laugh softly at one of Arun's clumsy drawings, they began to smile too. Day by day, she started to trust more. She followed Arun as he worked, carrying small tools or holding baskets of grain. Her steps were still unsure, but her spirit began to heal. Yet not everyone in the settlement was pleased. Some adults gathered one evening near the meeting hall. "This alien girl is not our responsibility," one man said. "We barely have enough supplies for ourselves." "She could bring trouble," another added. "What if others come looking for her?" Arun stood before them, calm but firm. "She is alone and broken. If we turn away, what does that say about us? We are human. Kindness is our strength. If we lose that, then we lose everything. Some shook their heads, but others listened. Slowly, doubt gave way to silence. Meanwhile, Lira, unaware of the full debate, continued to learn. She practiced human words with the children. She pointed at the sky and said star. She touched a flower and whispered red. Each new word made her smile. But at night, when the village was quiet, shadows returned to her thoughts. She remembered the cold eyes of her people, the harsh voices that told her she was worthless. In her dreams, she saw herself standing alone in endless darkness. One night, she woke with tears on her face. She looked around and found Arun resting near the door. He noticed her trembling and spoke softly, "It is only a dream." He did not know if she understood, but his calm voice eased her heart. Slowly, Lira began to believe that perhaps this place could be different. Perhaps she could belong here, not as someone weak, but as someone who mattered. The past still haunted her, but each day with Arun and the humans of the settlement gave her a little more strength. She was no longer just the broken stranger who had arrived at their gates. She was becoming part of their world. And though she did not yet know it, her presence would soon change the future of the settlement in ways none of them could imagine. The settlement grew used to the sight of Lira walking beside Arun. At first, people had whispered about her, unsure if she belonged among them. But as days turned into weeks, her presence became part of the rhythm of life. She moved quietly, never demanding much, always watching with curious eyes. Arun often found her near the fields, observing the farmers as they worked. She seemed fascinated by the way humans used their hands, their tools, and their voices to solve problems together. Her people, from what little she had shown, lived under strict order. Here, she saw something different: freedom mixed with cooperation. One morning, Arun handed her a small wooden basket. "Carry this," he said slowly, making the gesture with his hands. She nodded, copying the word carefully, "carry." Her voice was soft but steady. She followed him into the rows of crops, crouching beside him as he picked ripe vegetables. He showed her how to choose the ones ready for harvest. At first, her hands trembled, but soon she began to fill her basket with care. When Arun smiled and said, "Good," she repeated the word with pride, pointing to her basket. The children noticed her efforts too. They gathered around, teaching her new words by pointing at objects. "Stone," one boy said, holding a rock. She repeated, "Stone." A girl pointed to the sky, "Cloud." Lira looked up, whispering, "Cloud." Each new word was like a small light in her heart. Arun watched this with quiet joy. He could see her confidence growing. The girl who had once sat silent and broken now laughed softly when the children teased her drawings in the sand. She was learning to trust, not only him but also the others around her. Still, there were moments when her past clung to her like a shadow. At night, she sometimes sat alone, staring at the horizon. Arun noticed and joined her without speaking. They would sit in silence, watching the stars. She would trace shapes in the air, pointing at constellations, while he told her their human names. Slowly, her lonely nights became shared ones. One day, while repairing a fence near the outpost's edge, Arun handed her a simple tool. "Help," he said, showing her how to tighten the rope. She tried, fumbling at first, but then managed to do it herself. When she succeeded, she clapped her hands once in delight. "Help," she repeated proudly. Arun laughed, nodding. "Yes, you helped." That evening, when the settlement gathered to share food, Lira surprised them all. Without being asked, she carried bowls from one table to another, offering them with a smile. The older villagers, who once doubted her, exchanged glances. They saw not a stranger now, but someone willing to give back. Yet trust was not built in a day. Some still held doubts. A man whispered to another, she learns our ways too quickly. What if she uses it against us? But when Lira tripped carrying a basket and spilled its contents, she quickly bent down, gathering everything with embarrassment. Arun helped her, and soon even those who doubted had to admit she showed no harm, only effort. Over time, Arun taught her more words. "Friend," he said one evening, pointing to himself and then to her. She hesitated, then repeated, "Friend." Her eyes softened, as if the word itself carried a warmth she had long searched for. From that day, she began to use it often. When the children ran to greet her, she whispered, "Friend." When she shared water with an old woman in the fields, she said, "Friend." Each time, the humans felt their hearts soften a little more toward her. Lira also shared pieces of her world. She drew shapes of tall mountains and deep rivers unlike anything on this planet. She showed how her people built great towers, but her hand grew still when she tried to draw their faces. Arun noticed the way her eyes darkened at those memories. He gently placed a hand near hers and said, "Safe." She repeated the word slowly, almost as if testing its truth. Safe. One evening, a strong wind swept across the settlement. Dust filled the air, and some crops were at risk of damage. The settlers rushed to cover their fields, but the storm was sudden and fierce. Lira ran with them, helping to tie down cloth over the plants. Though her small hands struggled against the ropes, her determination never faltered. When the storm finally passed, everyone was exhausted but relieved. Arun looked at Lira, her hair tangled, her face dusty, yet her eyes shining with energy. She had not hidden from the storm, she had faced it with them. The villagers gathered around, sharing food once more. An elder stood and said, "This girl may not be human, but she works like one of us. Perhaps it is time we stop calling her stranger." Lira's eyes filled with light at those words, though she did not understand them fully. She only saw the smiles around her, and that was enough. That night, she sat beside Arun near the fire. She whispered the words she had learned, one by one. Star. Friend. Safe. Then, after a pause, she placed her hand on her chest and whispered, "Lira." Arun nodded, smiling. Yes, Lira. For the first time, she felt that her name truly belonged in this place. She was no longer only the broken girl from another world. She was becoming part of something larger, a family, a community, a home. And in her heart, trust began to bloom like the first flower after a long winter. The settlement had grown used to Lira's presence, yet not everyone welcomed her. Some smiled at her attempts to help, while others still whispered doubts when she walked by. She was different, and for some, difference was difficult to trust. One evening, as the villagers gathered in the meeting hall to share food and news, Lira sat quietly near Arun. She listened to the voices around her, though she could not understand every word. The firelight flickered across the faces of the settlers, and their low conversations carried mixed feelings. "She is learning too much, too quickly," one man murmured to his neighbor. "What if her people sent her here to spy on us?" A woman shook her head. "Look at her. She is thin and gentle. Does that look like a spy to you?" The man frowned. Gentle faces can hide sharp thoughts. Arun overheard them but said nothing for the moment. He knew suspicion grew easily when food was scarce and life was hard. Still, his heart ached at the unfairness. Lira noticed the tone of the whispers, though she did not know the words. Her head lowered slightly, and her hands tightened around the small bowl she held. The warmth she had begun to feel seemed to fade, replaced by the cold shadow of doubt she knew too well. After the meal, Arun walked with her outside. The stars shone bright above them, spread across the dark sky. He noticed the sadness in her eyes. "Do not worry," he said softly. "Some people fear what they do not understand. But fear can change." She looked at him, tilting her head, trying to catch the meaning. He pointed at her, then at his chest. Friend. Then he pointed at the stars. Hope. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Hope, she whispered, repeating the word with care. The next morning, work began early. The season's crops were growing well, but a storm had damaged part of the fields. The settlers gathered to repair the broken shelters for the young plants. Lira followed Arun, carrying tools in her small hands. When they reached the field, some settlers exchanged doubtful glances. Why bring her here? One muttered. She knows nothing of farming. Arun ignored the comment and guided Lira to a row of crops. He showed her how to tie a rope to steady the wooden poles. She watched carefully, then copied his movements. Her fingers moved slowly but with determination. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher. Sweat ran down the faces of the workers. Just when they thought the task would take all day, Lira surprised them. She tapped Arun's arm and gestured toward the far side of the field. With a stick, she drew a shape in the soil, curved lines that led to a small ridge. She pointed there, then to the plants. Arun studied her drawing. She is saying there is shelter there, he said to the others. Curious, the settlers followed her suggestion. They carried some plants to the ridge, where the land naturally protected them from the wind. It was a small change, but it saved time and effort. The villagers looked at her with new eyes. How did she know? Someone asked. Arun smiled. She has seen storms before. She knows the land. That evening, as the settlement gathered once more, the whispers sounded different. Instead of doubt, there was cautious respect. She was useful today, one man admitted. Yes, said another. Perhaps we judged her too quickly. Lira noticed the softer looks, the nods that replaced frowns. Though she could not follow every word, she felt the change in the air. Her shoulders, once tense, began to relax. Later, as she sat by the fire, one of the children approached her with a small flower in hand. Friend, the child said, offering it. Lira's eyes shone. She took the flower gently and whispered, Friend. Arun watched the exchange with quiet pride. Step by step, trust was being built. Yet he also knew it was fragile, like a young plant that needed care to grow strong. That night, as the settlement slept, Arun thought about the road ahead. Lira was learning their ways, and they were learning hers. But he also remembered the man's warning voice, what if her people come looking for her? The thought lingered in his mind like a distant cloud on a clear horizon. For now, though, the village was peaceful. Lira rested near the fire, the flower still in her hand. She dreamed not of harsh towers or cold voices but of warm faces and kind laughter. The whispers had not disappeared, but they were changing. And in those changes, a new bond was quietly forming, one that would be tested in ways none of them yet imagined. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds rolled over the horizon, and strong winds swept across the fields. The settlers rushed to protect their homes and crops, but the storm grew quickly, stronger than any they had faced in recent seasons. Arun was in the fields when the first heavy gust knocked down a row of wooden poles. He shouted to the others, tie them down. Save what you can. His voice carried urgency, but the wind drowned many of his words. Lira ran beside him, her small frame struggling against the fierce air. She tried to hold a rope, but it slipped from her hands. Dust stung her eyes, yet she did not run to shelter. Instead, she followed Arun into the heart of the storm. The settlers worked together, pulling cloth over the plants and tying down the poles. Some shouted for Lira to get back. She is too weak, one man cried. But Arun shook his head. She can help. Trust her. Lira studied the sky, her eyes sharp. She pointed toward the distant ridge, the same place she had drawn before. She tugged at Arun's arm, urging him to follow. He understood. She wanted to move more of the plants there. With a quick nod, Arun called to the others. Move the crops to the ridge. It will shield them from the wind. The settlers hesitated. Time was short, and the storm was fierce. But when they saw Arun and Lira begin to carry baskets together, they followed. One by one, people lifted what they could and made their way toward the ridge. The work was hard. The wind pulled at their clothes, and the dust made breathing difficult. Yet in that struggle, something powerful happened. Humans and the alien girl worked side by side, bound by the same goal to save their home. Lira stumbled more than once, but each time she rose again, carrying whatever her small hands could hold. Arun stayed near her, steadying her when she faltered. She did not need to speak. Her determination spoke louder than any words. By nightfall, the worst of the storm passed. The settlement was battered, but many crops were saved, thanks to the ridge. The settlers gathered in the meeting hall, exhausted yet relieved. An elder stood and looked at the people. We faced the storm together. Without her guidance, we would have lost more. He nodded toward Lira, who sat quietly near Arun, her clothes torn, her face streaked with dust. At first, silence filled the room. Then one by one, voices rose. She worked harder than some of us, a farmer admitted. She stood with us when she could have hidden, said another. And she was right about the ridge, added a third. Lira looked around, confused by the sudden attention. She understood little of their words, but she saw their faces no longer filled with doubt, but with respect. Arun placed a hand on her shoulder and said clearly, "They are thankful, Lira. You helped save the village." She blinked, her eyes shining with surprise. Slowly, she whispered the word she had learned, "Friend." The room softened. Smiles spread across faces that had once held suspicion. In that moment, she was no longer an outsider. She was part of them. That night, as the settlers repaired broken fences and cleared fallen branches, Lira worked among them. She carried wood, fetched water, and shared what little strength she had left. Children followed her, copying her words and gestures, laughing with her. Even the adults began to greet her with nods instead of silence. Later, by the fire, Arun sat with her. He handed her a piece of bread, and she accepted it with a tired smile. The flames flickered, lighting her face. "You are stronger than you think," Arun said gently. She touched her chest and shook her head, as if to disagree. Then she pointed to the people around them, to the fields they had saved, and finally to Arun. She whispered again, "Friend." Arun understood. Her strength did not come from being alone, but from being with others who cared. As the settlement settled into rest, the storm clouds drifted away, leaving the sky clear. The stars shone bright, and Lira gazed at them for a long time. For the first time since she had left her people, she felt not broken but whole. The struggle had tested her, but in that test, bonds had been forged. Bonds of trust, of friendship, of belonging. The humans had seen her not as a burden, but as one of their own. And deep in her heart, Lira knew that kindness had given her more than safety. It had given her a place to stand, a reason to keep moving forward. The storm had passed, but its memory remained a reminder that sometimes, the fiercest winds could bring people closer together. The days after the storm were calmer. The settlers worked hard to repair the damage, and slowly the fields began to recover. Lira stayed close to Arun, helping with whatever task she could. Though she was small and still weak, her spirit gave strength to those around her. For many in the settlement, the doubt that once surrounded her had faded. Children called her name freely, elders nodded to her as she passed, and families welcomed her at their tables. Lira began to believe she had truly found a home. But peace did not last. One afternoon, while Arun and Lira were working near the edge of the settlement, the sound of engines filled the sky. The villagers looked up as shadows passed over them. Strange ships, large and dark, descended slowly from the clouds. The air grew heavy as they landed just beyond the fields. The settlers gathered, uneasy. Arun's heart sank. He recognized the look on Lira's face: fear. Her wide eyes stared at the ships, and her hands trembled. She knew them. These were her people. The ships opened, and tall figures stepped out. Their clothing was sharp, their movements strict. Their eyes swept across the humans with cold judgment. At their front stood a leader who carried himself with pride. "We seek one of ours," he said in a strong voice. "The girl you shelter belongs to us." The villagers murmured in alarm. Arun stepped forward, his body tense. "She has been with us for many weeks. She was starving, broken, abandoned. We cared for her." The leader's eyes narrowed. "She is not yours to keep. She is of our blood. She must return with us." Lira stood frozen. Every word, every tone from her people pierced her heart like old wounds opening again. She remembered the cold voices that once told her she was useless, the harsh eyes that had looked at her with nothing but disappointment. Arun looked back at her. "Do you want to go with them?" he asked gently. She shook her head quickly, fear clear in her face. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. She clung to his arm like a child afraid of the dark. The leader noticed her refusal. His eyes hardened. "You belong with us. Do not disgrace yourself further. Come." Lira's whole body shook. She wanted to hide, but she also wanted to stand. For weeks she had learned from the humans, worked with them, laughed with them. They had shown her kindness where her own people had given her only cruelty. Arun stepped in front of her, facing the leader. "She has chosen. She stays with us." The villagers moved closer, standing beside Arun. For the first time, the settlement stood as one around Lira. No one called her a stranger now. No one doubted her worth. The alien leader's face darkened. "You would keep her against our claim." An elder of the settlement raised his voice. "We keep no one against their will. She is free to choose. If she wishes to remain, she is one of us." Lira looked at the faces around her: the children who had taught her words, the women who had shared food, the men who had worked beside her in the fields. Then her eyes met Arun's, calm and steady. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out from behind him. Her legs trembled, but she stood tall. She placed her hand on her chest and said, clear and strong, "Lira." Then she pointed to the humans around her. "Friend. Home." Gasps spread through the villagers. She had spoken more words than ever before, and they were powerful. The alien leader stared at her, his pride wounded. "You choose them over your own." Lira met his gaze. Though her voice shook, she spoke again. "Safe, here. Not safe, with you." Her people shifted uneasily. They had expected obedience, not defiance. The leader's jaw tightened, but he saw the determination in her eyes. She was no longer the broken girl they had cast aside. Arun stepped beside her, his voice firm. "You heard her. She has made her choice. Leave her." The leader glared at him, then at the settlers who stood united. For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Finally, with a sharp motion of his hand, he turned back toward the ships. "This is not the end," he said coldly. "But for now, we will leave." The aliens boarded their ships, and soon the engines roared again. The vessels rose into the sky, shrinking into distant shadows. When the last sound faded, the villagers cheered, relief flooding the air. Children ran to Lira, wrapping their arms around her. Elders smiled, and farmers clapped their hands. Lira stood among them, her heart racing. She had faced the people who once broke her, and she had chosen her new family. Arun placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were brave today," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes shining with tears not of fear, but of freedom. "Friend," she whispered, her voice filled with strength. That night, under the quiet sky, Lira sat by the fire with the others. The fear of her people still lingered, but it no longer controlled her. For the first time, she felt not abandoned but claimed not by blood, but by kindness. The bonds forged in the storm had been tested, and they had held strong. Lira knew her journey was not finished, but she had taken the greatest step. She had chosen where she belonged. The settlement woke to a peaceful morning. The sky stretched wide and blue, the fields whispered with new growth, and the people worked side by side with renewed energy. The storm had passed, the visitors from the sky had gone, and the community stood stronger than before. Among them, Lira walked with a calm step. Her fear no longer guided her. Though the memory of her people's ship still lingered in her mind, it no longer controlled her heart. She knew where she belonged. Arun noticed the change. He had watched her slowly transform from the frightened girl who had stumbled into their lives to the strong young woman who had stood firm against her past. Now, as she bent to gather seedlings, her movements were steady, not hesitant. That afternoon, the Council of Elders gathered in the central hall. They invited Arun and Lira to join them. The hall was simple, its wooden walls lined with the tools and memories of many seasons. The elders sat in a circle, their faces warm but serious. An elder with silver hair spoke first. "This settlement has seen much. We endured storms and hunger, but we also saw kindness heal what was once broken. Lira came to us as a stranger. Now she stands as one of us." The others nodded in agreement. Another elder added, "But her people may return. We must decide what place she holds here. She must know she is not half accepted. She must know she has a home." Lira looked around the room, unsure if she should speak. Arun gave her a small nod. Gathering her courage, she placed her hand on her chest as she had before. "I stay here. Home." Her simple words filled the hall with warmth. The elders smiled, and one of them said, "Then it is settled. From this day forward, Lira is part of our people. No one shall call her outsider." The villagers cheered when the decision was shared. Children ran to Lira, pulling her hands, eager to show her games. Women prepared food in her honor, and men lit lanterns to brighten the evening. For the first time, the celebration was not for harvest or for weather but for her. Lira sat near the fire, her eyes wide as music and laughter rose around her. The sound was different from the cold silence she remembered from her old life. These voices were full of joy. She did not feel like a shadow standing apart. She was in the center, and every smile was for her. Later that night, when the village grew quieter, Arun and Lira walked beyond the settlement. They reached the hill where they could see the stars spread across the sky. Lira lifted her face to the heavens, remembering how once she had feared their vastness. Now she saw them differently. "Your people may come again," Arun said softly, watching her. "But you are not alone anymore. If they return, you will face them with us." Lira nodded. She still felt the old pain deep inside, but it was softer now, no longer sharp. Not afraid," she whispered. Arun smiled. "That is because you are stronger than you know." Silence stretched between them, gentle and calm. Then Lira spoke again, her words halting but sure. "I want, learn more. Work. Help, all." Arun looked at her, pride in his eyes. "And we will teach you. You already give more than you know." The days that followed were full of growth. Lira learned how to weave cloth from plant fibers, how to shape clay into vessels, and how to read the simple symbols carved on the elders' tablets. She worked in the fields without fear, laughing with the children and singing softly with the women. Each small step was a victory. The girl who once hid her face now held her head high. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in red and gold, Lira stood at the edge of the field. She looked at the rows of young crops, each one growing strong after the storm. Arun came to stand beside her. "Do you see?" he asked. "The storm broke the land, but now it grows even better. You are like that, Lira. The pain did not end you. It made you bloom." Lira's eyes filled with quiet tears, but they were tears of hope, not sorrow. She whispered, "Because, kindness." Arun placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Yes. Kindness changes everything." That night, as the settlement rested under the stars, Lira lay in her small home, thinking of her journey. She had come broken, carrying only fear. Now she carried friendship, courage, and the warmth of belonging. Her story was not over. Her people might return, the world might bring new challenges, but she no longer faced it alone. She had chosen, and her choice had given her a new beginning. Far above, the stars shone quietly, as if watching over her. For the first time, she did not see them as distant and cold. She saw them as lights of promise. Lira closed her eyes with a smile, her heart filled with peace. Tomorrow would come, and with it, new work, new laughter, new life. She was no longer broken. She was home.